how's it going, everyone? Thank you for joining me on a new episode of Best and Worst Track of the Week on the Music Reviewer podcast. My name's Josh, and this week's episode of Best and Worst Track of the Week is going to be covering the week of December 26th. Last week of December, technically, for the Billboard Hot 100. Next week will be in the new calendar year, so we made it through this year. In this respect, I started this back in the summer, and honestly, it's felt like it's gone by pretty fast. But pretty lengthy or just very condensed, not condensed, but just jam-packed episode that we're going to be doing for this late in the year. When I started doing this, I had no clue that December would probably be one of the more busier months, but hey, it happened. And if you're new to Best and Worst Track of the Week, thanks for joining me. All this is a show I do on my podcast where I cover the new entries into the Billboard Hot 100, rate them all with the letter grade, and give one the worst track of the week and give one the best track of the week. That's all it is. All the Music Reviewer is a podcast where I like talking about music. Hopefully you do too. And I cover albums mainly. Sometimes I review albums that were impactful for me in the past, called Worth the Listens, but mainly just album reviews and this weekly segment. So thanks for stopping by. And this week on the Billboard Hot 100, like I was saying earlier, it's jam-packed mainly for two reasons. We had an album bomb by Taylor Swift's Evermore album, surprise album. The twin variant of this year's earlier release, Folklore, and also a Kid Cudi album bomb, but not quite full album bomb because the whole album didn't drop onto the Hot 100 from his latest album, Man on the Moon 3, which I decided because of this, since I didn't want to drop two album reviews basically on one episode of this show, I decided to review Kid Cudi's Man on the Moon 3, so I dropped that episode yesterday. So check that episode out if you want a thorough review of Man on the Moon 3. I thought that was a pretty cool album. I dug it for the most part. Not perfect by any means, but certainly a project Kid Cudi can be, pretty proud of. And with that in mind, if I covered the track thoroughly on the album review, I will only be really giving like a couple words and the letter grade for the track here if it made it onto the Billboard Hot 100. So and to point out the obvious, this is essentially going to be a Evermore review as well from Taylor Swift. I may or may not drop that album review, but since I'm covering every single track on this episode, that might not happen. And if you wanted to hear an album review from Evermore, it's going to be right here. So and I guess I pretty much covered the most recent things on the channel, the podcast, other than I dropped a surprise Christmas episode on the YouTube channel where I did some review of like some sort of new Christmas song list from GQ magazine. Very random, I know, but I thought it was fun. I kind of just re-ranked the list myself. If you want to check that out, go on to the YouTube channel. I will link that to this episode as well. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and get to the gist of this episode. So overall on the Billboard Hot 100, it was quite a busy week in terms of Christmas music as well. It dominated the top 10 of the Hot 100. No surprise, because we kind of saw that coming. Let's see. Out of all the top 10s, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 out of the top 10s tracks are Christmas songs. And with that being in mind, this week did not aggregate the data from what's left as December. So basically there's still another week coming of just like peak Christmas stuff, which I think might be even more dominant. So we'll see what craziness happens next week. The reason this week was so interesting was because of the album bombs. So some highlights in general. Willow came in at number 1 for Taylor Swift. That's, I guess, the most popular song off of Evermore right now. I certainly can't say I'm surprised she got a number 1 hit here this week. Every single song charted on the Hot 100. With that being said, the most competitive thing other than All I Want for Christmas Is You, Mood by 24K Golden, came down to number 5. I don't know what will happen with this track. I suspect it might have a slight resurgence after Christmas is over and done with, but it might also falter now that we're heading into a new year. We'll see. Also, Dynamite by BTS came up to number 9, making a huge jump this week. I don't know what really caused that to happen, because it looked like it was on its way out, but nice to see that going on there. Blinding Lights, the stubborn top 10 lingering track, has dropped down to 18 this week, possibly because of Christmas music, but we'll have to wait and see the fate of Blinding Lights. It might be on its way out. Also, I don't like covering the Christmas tracks for highlights, but Run Rudolph Run matched its peak at 29 this week. So we'll see. Maybe that'll rise next week. I'll keep an eye on it. And then Take Me Home for Christmas by Dan and Shay, a pretty lackluster track that almost got worst track of the week a week ago. Up to 58 this week. Please don't let this be a huge hit for them. I don't think it will, but come on, we don't need that to happen. And then Savage Love, the summer bop from Jason Derulo, To Save His Career, is finally out after 26 weeks out of the chart. Also, for Morgan Wallen, not a really good week. More Than My Hometown dropped out of the chart after 26 weeks. 7 Summers dropped out after 17 weeks, which I believe was a track that people were suspecting would be bigger for him. And then Midnight Sky by Miley Cyrus, one of our best tracks of the week, not in around August, dropped out around 17. This dropped out after around 17 weeks, so that kind of makes sense. I saw also on some other her last track left from her album is kind of dropped this week quite a bit too, so looks like the album hype died down. Also, Favorite Time of the Year by Carrie Underwood dropped down to 99. That came in about 3 weeks ago, I think, and it's kind of weird to see it almost dropping out this week with Christmas music being so popular. So, yeah, those were the highlights. Let's go ahead and get into the first track that came in. This is off the Kid Cudi album at 100, Beautiful Trip. I'm not going to include this track for any official ratings or including on Best and Worst Track of the Week. Mainly because this track is a few seconds long. It's a prelude to the opening of the album. The track overall has a Zen vibe going on with the instrumentation and the overall soundscape, and Kid Cudi doing his signature moaning moo style vocals over it at the very beginning, but it's not a full length song. So we'll just treat it as that. It's not going to be included as a letter grade. The next track was Damage by Kid Cudi at 91. I thought this track was decent. I gave it a B. I covered it thoroughly. Sort of a dark track. Some Travis Scott influence thrown in as well. Yeah, check that track out. And then next track was Sad People by Kid Cudi at 90. Was a little lukewarm on this track. This track almost even got worst track of the week, but just because it's not a terrible track at all. But the quality between Taylor Swift's album and Kid Cudi's album was just so, at the lowest good that it was hard to pick a worst track this week. But overall, the track's very heavy on the sub bass. A nice moment is created when the melodic, deep bass lines line up with Cudi's vocals and create this big sound, but at times though that low end on the sub bass kind of creates a muddy effect in the production. At times there's some dry and plucked strings in the intro as well that I dig, some nice little light and quirky melodies thrown in the instrumental as well. But what really happens on this track, it just lacks energy in comparison to the other tracks on the album. There is a nice light and floating nature to the track overall, but it just kind of doesn't get me over the hump when comparing to the other better tracks on the album, so I gave this a C. Next track was interesting. It reminds me of You with the Kid Laroi and Juice WRLD at 91. Boy, it really seems like we're getting a posthumous Juice World track almost every week, which is weird. I feel like we might be getting another Juice World album. This one did not strike me as bad as some of the other recent ones. Surprisingly, with the Kid Laroi on here, I'm surprised that happened. There's a nice crisp drum track on this, with some nice tension on that pre-chorus when the sub-bass harmony accompanies the vocal lines. That moment happens on the chorus too. The chorus and hook moment, though, is a bit atypical of Kid Laroi. It's a bit brash and oversimplified, juvenile. But I do like the contrast that Juice's voice provides on here. When he enters, it provides a much softer texture in comparison to Laroi. He even sounds a little bit like something like Trippie Redd would do. But he sounds kind of like, I know it's cliche, but Juice World was essentially Kid Laroi's teacher. Kind of feels like that type of vibe going on, the student and the master, if you will. Some strubbed and reverby guitar chords that add some nice texture to the track at times. I thought it was decent. I gave it a B. Next track was Heaven on Earth by Kid Cudi at 85. I thought this track was interesting. There's some bright keyboard melodies structuring the track. This track is pretty unique in the context of the album. Kid Cudi has like a DaBaby like flow on here. Dark, it's a dark track aesthetically. There's like this level of darkness that just coats the track. Some nice synth sub bass as well, supporting everything. And in the second verse, we get like this dark demonic color on Cudi's voice that I really dig. But the track does lose a bit of steam in the latter half of the track. But the track also has some nice vocal shouts that Cudi does to make the track a bit more interesting and energetic. It's not bad. I will say this a bit in terms of the Cudi album. Lots of Travis Scott influence going on and Blanton borrowing, but I gave the track a B. This next track was the first entering Taylor track, coming in at 82, Closure. This track has some glitchy percussive elements in the intro. I dig the weird sampled piano track thing that structures the track, and I like how the track sounds a bit chaotic, but still controlled at the same time. Maybe like some light Postal Service flair on here, or Sufjan Stevens. And I love the plucked bass line accompaniment as well. The track does, production-wise, sound a little bit overblown and distorted at times, but I think that was intentional to create an effect, and I gave this track a B. The next track was Dive by Kid Cudi at 80. Covered it on the review. Was pretty middle of the road on it. I gave this track a B. Some ethereal nature to the track. I thought it was okay. Next track I dug quite a bit from the Cudi album. Mr. Solo Dolo 3 at 78. Give it a B+. Covered it. Some interesting chill wave-like nature to it, maybe. Really dig how Cudi sounds on this track. Next track was off Taylor's album at 75, Majory. This track was good. There's some organic instrumentation on here, some plucked in string instrumentation, some nice supporting vocals that are laid down on the track. It sounds like Taylor Swift is really being sincere on here, more than usual. A warm keyboard track structures this song overall, and there's a synthy ostinato track that kind of blends in with the rest of the music's elements nicely. It's interesting. I give it a B. Next track was not Kid Cudi or Taylor Swift. It came in at 74, Way Out by Jack Harlow and Big Sean. This is the only thing that came in from the Jack Harlow album. So yeah, it doesn't look like commercially it did too well for Mr. Harlow here. And for this track, I listened to the album. I'm not going to review it, but I could have swore there was some other stuff that was better on the album to make it. I was not very fond of this track in comparison to, the rest of the stuff this week. There's a Spanish guitar track sample thing in the intro that kind of just goes on and on. It sounds a little cheap. It's just, and overall the beat just sounds like a different variation of what's poppin'. The beat drop sounds quite similar. There is a nice melodic accompanying bass track that I dig. And it's pretty middle of the road. Jack and Big Sean sound pretty average. They don't really seem like they're putting out their their best effort here. And kind of forgot this was on the album too. Like I had to check, was this on the album? And it was. So yeah, gave it a C. Next track was Cowboy Like Me at 71 from Taylor Swift. This track has like a bit of an Americana flair to it. It sounds a bit like the track with Bon Iver on it from the previous album, Folklore. Some pretty piano accompaniment all throughout the song. And the track has some low end that I wanted to hear on Folklore, but I just didn't get. I'm glad they had that here. A colorful and sensitive solo guitar on the track that I thought was nice. Honestly, it sounds like a tight indie folk band, like this is performing this track. Like in a different dimension, Taylor Swift, just her career ended up being that way. I would buy it if I listened to this track. So I give it a B+. Next track was Long Story Short by Taylor Swift, coming in at 68. I thought this was a decent track too. I love the Swift opening drum track. Some more like Sufjan Stevens, Postal Service type influence, like early indie 2000 stuff. A live drum track that really gives the track a lot of energy. This track just has a nice upbeat nature to it. Some nice clear instrumentation all throughout. Some bright synths and keyboards that add a nice touch. It's a straightforward and confident track. I give it a B+. Next track was Dorothea, coming in at 67. This was more of like the indie folk kind of vibe to it. Like it sounds like a Bright Eyes track, or even like a track that came out a few years ago from this band called Houndmouth called Sedona. To me, it sounded a little bit like that. A jingly, honky tonk like piano part. And a live drum track that fits the song quite well. Some nice warm accompanying bass is here as well. A bright overall sound in the mix that I think is just really nice, and some nice melodic lead guitars. Kind of hear some Lumineers in here as well. I give it a B. Next track was Another Day by Kid Cudi at 64. I covered it on the album review thoroughly. I give it a B+. I dig the mechanical nature on here. Pretty nice song here from Cudi off of the album. Next track was Ivy from Taylor Swift's album at 61. I thought this was a pretty solid track as well. I dig the warm bass accompaniment on here, the bright and organic instrumentation that just gives the track a nice and fluffy color. There's some interesting elements to the track that I think include like some flute or woodwinds that kind of just give this light aesthetic to the track. The composition overall is very natural feeling. There's a good bridge with some pretty backing vocals, and the track overall has some sensitive accompanying percussive elements. So overall, solid track. I give it a B+. Next track was also off Taylor Swift's album at 57, Evermore, featuring Bon Iver. This almost got Best Track of the Week. It's a pretty tough week to pick Best Track of the Week, honestly, and I love the resonant and prominent piano track that opens up this song. A nice low end on that piano. I love how the melodic theme Taylor is singing plays off of the piano melody as well, and it's just one of Taylor Swift's better vocal performances I've ever heard, and I love the utilization of Bon Iver here. He kind of comes in with a beat switch thing, and it creates like this tension that builds up all throughout the bridge, and I love the dynamic contrast of those two sections in the song, so I gave this track an A. Next track was Show Out by Kid Cudi, Pop Smoke, and Skepta at 54. Thoroughly covered this on the review. I give it a B. Overall, a decent drill beat song, but I feel like Pop Smoke and Skepta took the show away from Cudi. Next track was Happiness by Taylor Swift at 52. I like the ambient opening with Taylor's isolated vocals. There's a serene nature to this track with some fuzzy synth textures and a rich piano track that coats everything nicely. The hits on the first beat of each measure really create a nice dramatic effect on the track as well. Nice development in the chorus, and there's a bit of a more pissed off nature of this section of the song when we get like a bridge or B section, which I dig. I like when Taylor kind of brings that out, so I give this track a B. Next track was Deck the Halls by Nat King Cole. This was a bit of an anomaly. It came in at 47. This is a track all the way from the 1960s. This is a big band and swing variant of Deck the Halls, an orchestrated track with lots of different elements from the band and choir. It's not a bad rendition of the track at all. It's a little short. I give it a B. Next track was Tolerated by Taylor Swift at 45. I love the accompanying piano track here. It's rich and resonant. Taylor's vocals sound pretty nice over this. I like the heartbeat pulse bass drum hits as well. There's some nice light and sensitive electronic percussive elements that I dig. And the track has a bit of an angsty nature to it. There's a nice character change here on this track. It's interesting. Also, there's some interesting eerie string textures in the track. I give this track a B. Next track was at 41, Tequila Shots by Kid Cudi. This was the opening track of the album. Didn't think this was the best material off the album, but decent overall. The track has some wonky and eerie synth textures, Travis Scott-like, for sure. Nice transition to the trap beat when it comes in. Some nice rhythmic ideas and flow from Cudi. His typical vocal traits are displayed here. You immediately get like those cow moo vocal style things that he does, and the production does sound a bit hollow here in the snare and percussion. I do like how the track develops though. When we hit the chorus, there's a different vocal timbre in Cudi's voice that I think is a nice change. I'm just not a fan of the main hook on this track, but it's not as bad when you listen to it the next more and more. His enunciation of some things that he pronounces is just a little uncomfortable at times, but it's an interesting track. I give it a B. Next track was Gold Rush by Taylor Swift at 40. I dig the poppy nature on this track. There is a interesting direction that the track develops with when we hit the pre-chorus. To me, it sounds a bit awkward, very wordy and busy on those vocals. But the chorus and the main hooky nature of the Gold Rush line is the best part of the track when we get there. Some of the more interesting instrumental parts, like in the strings, are a little bit buried, but overall it's a nice track. I give it a B. Next track was 'Tis the Damn Season at 39 by Taylor Swift. I like the clear and bright lead guitar riff in here. It's almost James Bay-like. Some nice poppy flair to the track as well. I love how the guitar track develops and progresses. Some nice and sensitive drum work here as well, with a nice warm low end on the track. And I thought it had more potential, but it's not bad. I give it a B. Next track, coming at 34, No Body, No Crime by Taylor Swift featuring Haim. Thought this was a super good track as well. Almost got best track of the week. I love the attitude of this track right away with the rustic instrumentation and nature. I love the pronounced drum track and the effect the kick drums hits have. And there's a interesting tension that's created on this pre-chorus and chorus. The line goes, "I think he did it," is amazing, talking about, the accusation of cheating, and later that line just develops and develops. And I love the rhythmic nature of the bass track here as well. I love the angst on the track. The instrumentation just plays so well to the overall theme as well. I give this track an A. Next track, Champagne Problems, came in at 21 by Taylor Swift. This track seems like it's maybe like the dark horse to maybe be a bigger hit. We'll see. I didn't really get that same vibe as this being the perfect song on this album, but I thought it was good. There's a somewhat mushy piano tone on this, not as pretty and clear as other tracks on the album, but I do like some of the warm low-end accompaniment on this track, and I'm just not a fan of the feel that this eighth note piano chord progression brings to the track. It kind of gives it a syncopated feel that reminds me of like reggae for some reason, and it kind of just throws the whole track off for me. But overall, it's a pretty straightforward track. The track doesn't really lead to any other interesting moments, but I give it a B. And finally, I gave Willow by Taylor Swift, that came in at number 1 this week, a B. I like the dry and plucked guitar material in here. An interesting usage of high register here by Taylor Swift. And once these rhythmic elements on the track, like the bass and drums, come in, the track gets a lot better. And the track is definitely very earwormy due to the main guitar track that structures everything. It's quite catchy. And the track overall is just quite consistent and straightforward. I give it a B. And finally, we are to that point. We got through the main bunch of the tracks. Now we go to the worst track of the week, and we'll start there so I can leave on a positive note with the best track of the week. But yeah, worst track of the week. I honestly didn't really want to give anything this week worst track of the week, but this kind of had to take it. It's Coney Island by Taylor Swift featuring The National that came in at 63. The Achilles heel of this track is that it's just a little drab. It's a little bland, and I do like The National too. I just don't think Taylor Swift and The National combined to make all that interesting of a track. There's a plucked guitar and mandolin intro that sounds like stock music from like a commercial. That type of stuff, and there is a nice warm accompaniment in the rhythmic elements of the track. I'd say that stuff's pretty cool. I'm just not sure if I like hearing The National in this content. In this context, and the track is just a bit comatose. I'm not sure how I like how the track develops either. The climatic moment that everything tries to build up to just doesn't really pay off that much, and The National's lead vocalist here, Matt Berringer, just drains so much energy from this track. He's giving that performance that he's known for, where it's just very low end, almost talking like, and it creates an effect, but I just don't think the effect fits Taylor Swift's music. So, fortunately, worst track of the week goes to this track. Best track of the week goes to Kid Cudi with She Knows This. I love this track. In another world, this would be like another sicko mode. I like the plucked instrumental sample here. There's a nice bouncy beat that gives the track a lot of energy, probably one of the most energetic parts of the album. An uncomfortable whistle like sample thing thrown on the track that kind of creates this really nice effect that I didn't really notice it at first, but I really do dig it in the whole entire mix. And the track doesn't try to do too much. It's just vibe. There is a lovely transition to a faster beat switch a la Travis Scott, and the song improves right then and there. But like I said, this album has a lot of Travis Scott influence. This is essentially a borrowed idea, I think. I had to really look up if Travis Scott is featured on here, but he's not. So I'd say that's maybe one criticism of this track. But the B section of this track just has a lovely, dirty synth ostinato melody that just makes the track so good. And the track has this nice, tense buildup, in the later portion of the track that just creates a super interesting moment. And I think it's one of the best tracks on that album. Best track of the week goes to Kid Cudi with She Knows This. But yeah, if you stuck it out with me to the end of this best worst track of the week, thanks. I knew it was a little lengthy. I tried condensing it as much as I could. But yeah, we'll see what happens next week. Keep tuning in for more music reviews as well. And thanks for tuning in on your respective streaming service. Hopefully if you're taking the podcast, you're subscribed, or if you're listening on YouTube, like and subscribe if you're a fan. If you want to leave some feedback, good or bad, go ahead and do it. And I'll see y'all later. Take care.